had on a shaman.
Okay.
Which is,
Right.
It's like, man, how do we get anywhere if we don't talk to people?
Right.
Like, what are we just gonna fight each other and just always focus on our differences?
Yep.
If you're going to live, if we're all gonna get our own planet, you're gonna have your Hispanic planet, your white planet, your this religion planet, that religion planet, and we don't have to, associate with each other, then fine.
Yeah. Bro, even if we did that, we'd find ways to create differences, not just to create them to have conflict, but even with differences, we'd end up mixing. If you had a whole planet over here, we'd find a way to get over to the other planet. I think it's human nature anyway. So it's kind of funny when we do sort of, create those differences and conflicts, because inevitably we end up doing stuff that, sort of belies all of that stuff. So,
are you already on?
Yeah, we're rolling.
All right, we'll save that. What's up, Taj?
Hey, it's good to be here, man.
Thanks for coming, man.
Man, my pleasure, man. My pleasure.
I appreciate it, man. So tell everybody who Taj is.
Oh, man, you got a couple hours?
We do.
No, so I'm everyone knows me. My name is Taj Ashaheed. Most people know me as Brother Taj. I am a lot of things, I guess. First and foremost, a father, Muslim, community activist, a whole bunch of other stuff, man, really. I think I have one of those very, very interesting lives. So I seem to have a lot of interests and always sort of have my fingers in some sort of pot here or there. But I have a big interest in community activism and social justice. I do a lot of work in that realm. I'm formerly incarcerated, so I do a lot of work in terms of criminal and juvenile justice and reform as well. Spend a lot of time trying to raise my kids. I've grown kids, and I have a 5-year-old as well. And I think a lot of that really constitutes a lot of what my time and attention is at. So, yeah.
Where'd you grow up at?
So I grew up mostly in Maryland on the East Coast, but I was a Air Force brat. My father was a career Air Force man. He had a lot of my sort of varied interests I got from him, and just through his example. He was an electrical engineer, but he also worked in intelligence, worked for the NSA, and also did, as an electrical engineer, his primary focus was aerospace. So he did a lot of designing of missile and carrier systems. And so just, kind of an interesting person in and of himself. But being an Air Force brat, I lived in several different states throughout the nation, but most of my time was in Maryland. So came to Colorado right in my senior year of high school, and haven't left. So.
Yeah, I left the East Coast in 1990. I don't remember. I think 89.
Okay.
89. I went to California in 89. Yeah. California was a wild place in 89.
Heck yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I remember 89. That was a wild period.
Yeah, especially if you don't have people looking after you and you're running around.
Yeah.
But one of the things I've really looked at a lot of your content,
mm-hmm.
and I've really liked the community activism stuff, or not. I shouldn't say community activism. That's a piece of it, but just the overall activism. Yeah. And I really appreciate people who even if you don't agree with if someone doesn't agree with you, but I like people who try to make things better.
Yeah.
Even if people don't agree with them.
Yeah.
Because activists seem to be like an easy target.
Oh yeah.
Because they're speaking out, or they're just fighting against something or for something.
Yeah.
and it seems like they're just an overall easy target. When actually, if you listen to them, most activists are trying to make the world a better place.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So what gave you a passion for activism?
That's a good question, bro. I think in large part, I would say just lived experience. And then within that, you know, the particular things that I experienced, especially, I think a large part of my activism is my religion, and then my experience with the criminal justice system and criminality just in general. And so as a Muslim, you know, my faith has it imbued the idea of activism. And I agree. Like, I think most activists are trying to make the world a better place and culpable. And, you know, Islam has those ideals already sort of laced into the religion. And so I think you'd be hard pressed to be a Muslim and not be engaged in some sort of activism, some level of it. And so that, coupled with having been formerly incarcerated and seeing how the criminal justice system, and especially the prison system, our system of incarceration, has developed, and the effect that it has on our community in general, I think it has pushed me to being an activist. When I think about like when I started, you know, I started really doing any sort of activism and especially community activism like right after 9/11.
Here, pull forward because you're on the curtains, because you're a big guy.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead, pull up as far as you can. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, right after 9/11 is kind of when I sort of started doing it, because, you know, that incident cast a shadow over the Islamic community. And well, interesting enough, it cast a shadow, but also cast a lot of light. And it gave, I think, our community a good opportunity to sort of do some community outreach and speak for the religion, to educate people about what Islam was and wasn't. And I found myself caught up in doing that. And I think from there, and at the time I was also had been formerly incarcerated. I converted to Islam in prison. And so dealing with that system already, I think, you know, that it sort of springboarded me into just, you know, the general sort of realm of activism in and of itself. So,
you know, one thing that happened recently that really not necessarily changed my mindset on what a lot of people are going through, but it really took this demon and made it real for me. Like, I think it's easy for people to say, hey, it's 2026. Why are these people over here feeling like they can't get an equal piece of the pie? Why is this group over here feel like they're, you know, not included or isolated? Mm-hmm. And that was the whole Epstein thing.
Okay. Right.
Like, it's wild to me how deep and layered it really is, how these people, I mean, you hear about it and you get, you know, you have, you're around, you know, friends, and you debate, and you're like, man, you don't think the government's, you know, doing this or doing that. Yeah. But you have all these thoughts about what people are doing and what the government's doing and what powerful people are doing. But this just like made it like 100x. Yeah. Like, it's crazy how much is being revealed of how these people really are manipulating all of
everybody.
us.
Yeah.
Like everybody.
Yeah. I'm struck by, and I've always been struck by, the apathy of people for a situation like this, where it couldn't have gone as deep as it has gone without people knowing that it was happening and doing nothing about it. and sometimes even swept up in it themselves. That's the stuff that always amazes me. I'm amazed as more comes out, but then you look and you're like, yeah, there's a whole lot of people that are involved and have been involved for a long time that have not said anything or done anything for whatever reason. And that stuff always amazes me.
And now you can go back and you can look at those people's voting records.
Yeah,
you could see things that they did.
Yeah, that helped it up. Yeah, man. Where they benefited who, the people running this thing. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's like when you're in school and there's somebody who instigates a fight between people, and you're over there fighting, and you look over and those people are laughing.
They're just laughing, and
recording you or something. And now you guys are looking at each other like, wait.
Like, yeah, we were pawns in this game, man.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, man. That's yeah, exactly. Yeah, that stuff always amazes me, man.
So people like you who have been activists, who've been out there screaming this stuff forever, and maybe not understanding how deep this really runs, but having a feeling that something's not right. Like how does it feel to see these things start to get revealed?
It's like I said, to me, it's kind of crazy to see it.
This episode is brought to you by the Josh Henry Workshop, where craftsmanship meets purpose. Whether you're in the kitchen slicing up dinner, out in the woods, or just need a reliable everyday carry, the Josh Henry Workshop has you covered. Every knife is handmade and hand-forged in the good old USA in North Carolina by a veteran-owned small business that puts heart, heritage, and pride into every blade. Michael, what do you think about the Josh Henry Workshop knives?
Jeremiah, I love the quality of the Josh Henry Workshop knives. These are not mass-produced tools. They are custom pieces built to last, with real attention to detail. So if you're looking for a knife that works as hard as you do, check out the Josh Henry Workshop. You'll find your new favorite blade, and you'll be supporting a small business that truly cares about the craft. Visit the Josh Henry Workshop on either Instagram or Facebook at Josh Henry Workshop to learn more or to place a custom order today.
Is better opportunities, and the world sort of becomes better. I see that moving in that direction, or it's just going to all fall apart, and then we're all, going to be in Armageddon, one of the two. But for me personally, though, it drives this thing of because the more that I deal with more and more people, then the more exposed I get to different ideas and the different ways of life, which is a thing that I've always been interested in anyway. And so the more these controversial issues sort of unfold and you start seeing more and more human faces and you start seeing different experiences and you end up building different, connections. It's pretty interesting. I worked in the political arena, like really deeply, back in the 90s, because I ended up falling into this job where I worked for Clinton. I managed his public opinion polling, and then that work led me to end up working for President Obama as well. And so I was exposed to a lot of the machinations of politics that a lot of people don't really see. And it was kind of fascinating to me because I was kind of a fly on the wall that I wasn't expected to be there. And so to be able to see it from an vantage point was pretty interesting and revelatory to me. There was a lot of things that I saw that I had no idea, was going on.
Like what, for example?
Just how politics sort of evolved and how messaging was way more important than the actual political issues that people, especially candidates and even people in power, were running on. That was my realm, was working in messaging. And the company I worked for, the organization I worked for, they specialized in like crisis management. So to be able to kind of be in situation rooms and see how people thought about how they dealt with crisis was eye-opening for me. And because it also gives you a window into what politics is really about.
Are you talking about when they try to manipulate things to get people to be in their favor?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was what really political strategy was about. Here's my idea, and I need to do X, Y, and Z to get everyone to think that idea is a good idea and to follow it. And that's what politics is. It really is that whatever the political issues that people, candidates, leaders claim to, be running on or wanting to put into place, all of it sounds good, but it's really usually not about that. It's really just about how can I get people to follow my opinion, agree with me, and then act on that agreement, which usually means give me money. So
that they can get the power.
Yeah.
Because that's ultimately what it is, right?
Absolutely.
They're trying to get that position.
Yep, absolutely.
So do you think they care more about the position than the actual issues?
Yeah, because ultimately,
it kind of feels that way.
Yeah,
sometimes.
and that because that's how you get longevity. That's how you
take the word feelings out of it, because people say that's how you feel. Let me correct that. It kind of looks that way.
Yeah, it looks that way because that's the way it is. I mean, it's just that simple. You do now. I'm not 100% jaded. There are politics and politicians that are based on the idea of establishing good ideas and trying to establish these virtues that we sort of aspire to as people, as a country, and whatever. That does exist. There are people, politicians, candidates who do have these ideas and they do believe in them. But when you jump into that whole process of politics, you end up compromising if you're going to make any headway. That is just part of the game. And so you then lose that, that sort of zeal for your ideas. And for a lot of politicians, you end up realizing it's a hopeless cause anyway. And so you just end up, most politicians end up just going, along with the flow in terms of how it is, which again, as you said, it's really just about power and money, unfortunately. But
yeah, you see sometimes where they almost follow trends.
Yeah.
And they try to sell the trend or try to get people to believe that they're with the trend.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, last week you were saying something that would go against this, but it was good. It was a good cause,
right?
But it wasn't as trendy or as popular,
right?
But it was good for people. But now we're not focusing on that because it's not popular.
Or it's not going to. Yeah, it's fell out of favor now, or popular opinion says otherwise, which is again why polling is so important. But it's rare. It's rare for people in politics to push an idea, especially a good idea, that's good for people. It's rare for them to push that and continue to push it and continue to push it, because eventually they're going to run into opposition. They're going to run into exploitation. And so, and people learn to push the idea quickly as possible, get what they can get out of it, and move on to the next. So.
Yeah. What are some manipulations that you think they've done on us? Just people. What do you think? What are some manipulations that you've seen?
I think the biggest one, because there's so many, to be quite honest, but I think the biggest manipulation is the idea of a two-party system, and that's the way that it's always been, and that's the way that it should work. And that for me is a big one because, historically it hasn't been, it's been everything but that. But that the people have an interest, politicians have an interest in sort of keeping this idea in play. And most people, I think, in this country have kind of fallen for that. They've either given their affinity to one party, which means you got to fight the other one intrinsically, and don't really think beyond the two-party system. We look at third-party candidates and the ideas that live there as fringe, and we generally will look at the parties as the lesser of, two evils. I'm a Democrat because the Republicans are horrible, or I'm a Republican because the Democrats are so bad. And any idea of, well, maybe create another party or maybe look at a candidate from an independent party is generally frowned upon. It was interesting, especially like in the last presidential election, where there was this sort of popular idea that if you didn't vote for one candidate, you were in effect voting for the other. And I was like, that doesn't even make sense logically, but it's also not actually true. But it was, it was such an ingrained idea that was going around. It's like, yeah, no wonder our politics end up the way it is now. So I think people are starting to question it a little bit, but still, it's still a two-party system that our political system still is driving into people's heads. And I think that's probably one of the biggest manipulations that we've seen in the past, probably 20 years.
So with you being, with people and doing a lot of activism, how do people feel? Like, how do you see people feeling about everything that's going on?
That's a good, yeah. I think, like, in the overall sense, in the general sense, there's a lot of frustration from people from every sort of political corner, to be honest. And then there's, so in the general sense, there's just frustration. I see it coming from conservatives and liberals and Republicans and Democrats. It's just frustration with their own party, frustration with the way things are, especially economically and maybe just even in a social sense. And then when I look a little bit more into, like, how do people in different categories feel? Even in different categories, there's still that frustration. But it's an interesting thing to see, like, how people feel, for example, in the Muslim community, who have been traditionally conservative and now are kind of, looking at conservatism as something that has betrayed them. It's interesting to see.
Yeah, because a lot of Muslims, I think, vote Democrat.
Now they do. There was a shift, honestly, since the Obama election, but traditionally Muslims have voted conservative, which makes sense because of our religious background.
Right.
But ever since really Obama was elected, that's where the shift really came. And that was really because the Republicans had, were caught really, putting in place strategies that were Islamophobic and deliberately targeting people's ideas of Islam post 9/11. And this is 2008. So that, 9/11 had happened, several years before, but it was that particular election that really made the big shift. For Muslims, I think, politically, you saw a lot more political activism, and there were a couple of Muslim political action committees that popped up after that election that are still pretty vocal today. And so, yeah, that shift happened there. But it was interesting to see, like, yeah, you know, that whole conservative viewpoint was not in our best interest, and we thought that they were.
But then again, I think after Obama was in office, then I seen a lot of Muslims like be confused about which party to be in, because Obama, there was like the most drone strikes they had against, you know, in other Muslim countries, and a lot of wars in Muslim regions. So then they were like, we don't trust Democrats or Republicans now.
Yeah, I agree. I would say, though, that it didn't create it created questions, but Muslims who kind of threw in with the Democratic Party didn't leave the Democratic Party because of the drone strikes, because there was still the idea of the idea that was promoted was, the drone strikes are occurring because these factions of Muslims who are not very good representatives of Islam are killing other Muslims, and they are acting, especially with ISIS, which most Muslims were opposed to. Most Muslims were opposed to ISIS. You had a very small minority of people within Islam, even worldwide, and especially in the United States, who felt that, you know, ISIS was legitimate. Most Muslims didn't feel that they were legitimate, and so
I would say almost 100% of Muslims did not like ISIS. I knew people from other areas that ISIS had threatened to come in to their countries and say, we're going to come to your country next. And they said, if you come over here, we're
fighting.
We're killing all of you.
We're fighting. Yeah. And so
they told the Palestinians they were coming in there next, which was weird, because in the Golan Heights, where Syria, that's the occupied part of Syria that Israel has. Yeah. ISIS soldiers were going over there to hospital tents and everything that Israel had set up to help the ISIS soldiers to heal, patch them up or whatever, to medical treatment. Right. And then ISIS said they were going to go into Palestine and attack the Palestinians. It was just a lot of weird stuff there. I'm not saying, people have argued with me saying, well, of course Israel was running the show, but I'm like, I don't know. Because I don't have any evidence to that, but the circumstantial evidence doesn't look too favorable. Yeah. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah. It is weird, extremely weird, because but it's always kind of been the case where you had on the surface ideas that look like they were opposed to each other, and then you find out that there's some cooperation, and then you have where you think factions are really fighting each other, and then you realize, no, there's some cooperation going on here that's not really known, not promoted. And so I think ISIS found that out, and that's kind of what threw them really off balance. They really felt like they were going to get a lot more support from Muslims all over the Middle East, and then the reality was they were running into brick walls.
And there was lots of guys in ISIS that weren't even like from those regions.
Yeah.
You had dudes all tatted up, like Hispanic dudes with
from LA. That had somehow gotten over there. I mean, and not even from LA, even from the region. I mean, ISIS attracted the fringe, and the fringe never had respect from the majority of the Muslims in the first place. So that was their issue that they had not really been prepared for.
What do you think makes people blind to see that? Because it's out there. Yeah. They'll just stay on their page. They'll follow their guy, right? Yeah. They'll follow their leader. Yeah. Oh, this guy is, he's in the Republican Party. Maybe he's not the president. Maybe he's not in the Congress or the Senate, but he's this right wing political guy, or this left wing political guy, and he's got millions of followers, and he posts something on his page, and then that group just takes it and is like, they repost it, and but they never check it out. Like this one I seen recently, this guy that I know, he posted that speaking of Muslims, that Muslim terrorists burned down a Christmas tree in the UK.
Okay.
And I was like, wow, that's wild. I haven't heard about that. Like one of those big Christmas trees they put outside, like in Times Square or something. So I was like, wow, I haven't heard about this story. So I looked it up, did some research, found out very quickly that it was a Christmas tree from a couple years prior, not even this year, because I just posted it this year. It happened in a Chinese mall.
Wow.
And it was because somebody threw a cigarette butt, and it was in the mall. It was like in the middle of the mall. And they'd have those planter boxes and all that. Somebody had thrown a cigarette butt in there and started on fire. It had nothing to do with Muslims. It had nothing to do with terrorists, not even non-Muslim terrorists.
Right.
And it's like, but these group of people, they just see the story, they repost it, and then they talk a bunch of shit.
Yeah. And
all the comments are like, fuck Muslims, and they're all terrorists, and they're next. ICE is coming for them next, and you're just like, it's not even. They didn't do anything.
Yeah, how did that happen?
It's weird.
I think a lot of that comes from the long-standing way that we spread news, right? And then in light of how technology has affected that, because first of all, the way that we spread news was always a coin flip between information and gossip, always, right? I think just traditionally as human beings.
Sure, makes sense.
Yeah, and so when we started using formal methods like the press, that never changed, because the interest of the press was, how do we get information and news out in a way that's cost effective, which is why then they have to run ads and get money to then pay for the paper and the ink and the printing press, right? And so now there's this other interest in terms of, why am I spreading the news, right?
Or this group that's like, hey, I pay you the most.
Exactly.
I give you the most.
Now,
yes. Why are you writing this story? This affects me because I'm doing business with those people.
Exactly. So now you see how things change in the way that we spread the news, who spreads the news, and now who's perceived to be a legitimate source of news, or even what is a legitimate source and how we define those things. And all of these influences have been in play since there was anything called the news. And then, of course, now you have the internet, and now you have social media, and we have become, it's because the news was always about, it developed the idea of sound bites. That's the headline, right? And so when you throw in radio and television, now it's attention span, and now I got to say things that's going to grab your attention. Might not make sense, might not believe it, but I grab your attention. And then there's the commercials, and so all of that comes into play today. As like now we are maybe not so much headlines because nothing's printed as much, but it's all comment sections and what's the headline of the post, right? What's the tagline of the post, and who's where did this post come from, and what page did it come off of, and who's running that particular website, and whose web service is it, and it's all still about, got to create the message, grab the attention, and then I'll worry about what the consequence is. And now, in my opinion, now in terms of information and news, the biggest thing about it is, the comment section. What is just like hell on earth, right? Because now you have a platform, because it's a platform within the platform where people we can indulge in our human nature of just being assholes, right? Because that's part of who we are as human beings. And so now I can just say what I want to say. There's little to no accountability. And if I say something that grabs people's attention, whether it's controversial or not, then I'm going to get attention. And it's that, a lot of that is what drives the information that we get. Like you said, you can take somebody accidentally setting a tree on fire in a country across the world and take it and make whatever message you want, because you know that it's not about what you say, it's about how will people react. So it wasn't even the article that was really as important as what were people saying in the comment section. And that's kind of how it is today now. You know, what we know about news and information is not as important as what are people saying about it underneath it, whether it's true or not, whether they believe it or not. Because the people who are driving those stories, that's where they're looking. If I post a thing, on my social media, if I post an article or I post an opinion, I know that the most important thing about that is what are people's reactions. Because it's their reactions that's going to drive whether what I've said is relevant or not, or whether it's going to create a discussion or any sort of movement. And I think most people, especially in media and in communications, they understand that, and that's what drives, you know, what we see on our timelines now. So,
yeah, I get into so many conflicts with people because they'll tell me things, and I'm not trying to be, you know, confrontational with people, but they'll tell me things, and just on the surface, I'm like, what? That doesn't even sound, that doesn't even make any sense.
Right.
I'm like, and so I'm like, where did you hear that? And if I even start asking questions, they're like, what do you, like,
how dare you?
Whoa,
how dare you? Yeah.
I'm like, can we just look into it for a minute?
Yeah.
Can we just do a little research here? Yeah. We have all the same technology that's spreading all this bullshit.
Yeah.
We can still use that same technology to find out if this is true or not.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take too long.
Yeah.
And man, people are like, oh, you're like this. Oh, you're one of those people. You're this, you're that. And I'm like, no, I've just told you, I don't know. I need to look into it some more. And then 5 times out of 10, it's what the story they're all hyped up about, or they're reposting. Yeah. It's fake.
It's fake as hell. Yeah. I think the most important thing for us to do is just maintain the idea of just critical thinking, which is what you're talking about. You have to be a critical thinker, and in order to become one, you have to be taught to be that. And that's what I think is our biggest problem, is that our schools especially don't do a good job of creating people who think critically. And I mean, I can say that from experience. I didn't learn to be a critical thinker until I went to college. And when I started learning, I was like, damn, I wish I had learned that when I was in middle school.
What do you think changed when you went to college? Like, how did you think before you went to college, and versus, you know, when you started to have an open mind?
The big change was learning critical thinking gave me confidence in my own mindset, my own ideas. Because I think up until that point, I don't think I was very I could have opinions, but I don't know that I was confident to argue with people, right? Or to even create an argument, or even to express my own opinions. I had them, and for the most part was okay with sort of following what my own ideas were, but I didn't have the real confidence.
Sure.
That these ideas meant anything. So they were just for me.
Yeah.
And when I learned how and began thinking critically, that confidence came. Because even if you think critically, you're not going to avoid confrontation. But what will happen is you can avoid conflict. And I learned that I can have an opinion, and it's more than likely someone else is going to have a different one. But when I come into contact with that, we can have an argument and we can agree to disagree, or I can say, oh, I'm learning something and agree with you, or vice versa. And I don't have to be afraid of creating a conflict. I can walk away from that. And I've learned how to operate like, and that's how I do now. I always come into contact with people who have different opinions than me. I have, and even have engaged in arguments with them, but I've learned to avoid the conflicts, and I've also learned to walk away, period, from the argument. And it all goes back to that thing, I'm always reminded, like, man, I learned this. I learned how to deal with this. I learned how to deal with this argument. I learned how to deal with this person who said this, stupid ass comment to me or criticize me in this way. And I'm like, yep, I learned how to deal with that. So then how do I, I'm strategizing. How do I best deal with that? So, but I think it just goes back to that. If we can do a much better job in teaching people to be critical thinkers, and we can begin with our youth, I think that's pretty key. Because until we do that and make some headways, we're always going to have, comment section politics and news,
Something I want to talk to you about. I just want your honest opinion.
Okay.
Because it's something that I've experienced. I mean, I grew up, I think we're about the same age.
Probably. Yeah.
I just turned 50. I don't know how old you are.
56. Yeah.
Oh, you're an old guy.
Yeah, I just turned 56.
Making me feel good. And, I told some of our last guests that we had on that my generation, our generation, we fucked out racism. And they were like, what do you mean? I'm like, in the 90s, I'm like, we all had mixed babies.
Yeah.
Like,
Just
the 90s was the time where everybody, it seemed like racism was just going down and down and down. And then with this current administration, and in my opinion, I think there's a lot of division. Well, I wanted to ask you also, before I get into this, what do you think about this current administration?
I have a lot of if I'm totally honest, I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. Because I have a weird viewpoint about Trump. And I don't think it's weird, but I would say it's unpopular in the sense of not a lot of people think of in the way that I do. Because I look at Trump and I see like his stupidity and his ignorance. And then I also see his audacity, and I see where he's been successful in terms of really just wanting to do what he wants to do. I don't know that he understands why he wants to do it or what the real consequences of his politics are. And I don't think he even cares. I think that he is more concerned with, if I want to do this, I'm going to do it. I think there's a lot of motivation that's financial, but ultimately, I don't know that he even understands these consequences, because in order to do that, especially from the position of president, you have to have a command of history. You have to have a command of economics. And I don't think he has it. And I certainly haven't seen evidence of it. But I do see, and this is why I think he got elected and reelected, is that people see him as successful in terms of, I'm going to set out to do what I want to do. And that's very American, right? There's something that's very American about this approach and this attitude.
He's a winner.
Yeah.
I want to be a winner.
And people, and also like talk shit doing it, right? Like and that's American. I don't care what anybody says. Like we will talk shit while we fight. And when we win, we're like, that's the formula for success. And President Trump has been the epitome of that. And so when I look at him, I'm like, okay, if I have these ideas, or people that I know have these ideas about being success, ideas that they want to make successful, if you want to adopt a strategy, you at least have to look at a strategy that is successful. And so I look at Trump and I'm like, okay, what could the next president do, or what kind of approach could the next president take where they could maybe overcome all of the traditional complaints about government? What can the next president do who's going to have to fight Congress, have to fight both sides, both parties? What could they do to overcome Washington gridlock? What could the next president do to say, you know what, I'm going to put in place a policy that attacks poverty, and I don't give a damn what anybody says, I'm just going to do it? What could the next president do to make sure that he's or she's successful? And I'm like, look at this dude, right? If Obama, like Obama's failure was that he was ultimately a typical politician in the sense of, I got my ideas, want to put them in place, but damn it, I've run into what's always been problematic with government, and now I can't do what I want to do. And I got to make compromises, and I got to, cut this and increase this, and that's just the way it is. And that's where he failed. And for me, I'm like, no, what you want a president, a black president that's like Trump, in the sense of, I don't give a damn. I'm going to put this stuff in place, and I'm going to fight whoever I have to fight. And I'm going to be successful. And when I'm successful, I'm going to talk shit about that success, because the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to need that as well. That's how I look at this. This is how the next president should approach it. So when I look at Trump, I'm like, yep, he's racist. In my opinion, always has been. Maybe not to the level that I've seen racists be, but I'm not, it doesn't surprise, his racism has never surprised me, and his idiocy has never surprised me. So I'm like, okay, we got what we have, because most of us in this country elected him. And so now I'm like, so how do we undo the damage? And then how do we not repeat it? And then how do we actually get stuff done that's actually going to be beneficial to Americans in this country, and especially the majority who are struggling financially, who are struggling with and these social ills that we have always had in our country. And I'm like, there's some formula for success from this straight up idiot. And I think it behooves the next people in line who are, vying for power to be like, let's look at that. And what can we take from that? So I look at him, I can acknowledge everything that's bad about him, but I'm looking at, well, what's the silver lining that can be taken from him and used in the next phase for somebody who could actually do some good. And so that process in my brain, I apply that to, in the realm of where I do my activism. So I'm like, what can people do? What can black people do? Take from Trump and apply in their own lives and in their own situations that can create change for them. What can Muslims do? What can poor people do? Because I'm poor. So, what can people do who are traditionally outside of this, who could look at this dude and say, man, let me take that bit of audacity and apply it? Because I think you have to have some audacity, especially when you're an activist, especially when you're trying to overcome all of the opposition that you have in your life, whether it's money, whether it's race, whatever it is, you have to have some audacity. And if you want the prime example of audacity, it's Trump, who learned it, I think, from other people, including Obama. But I would say take the lesson of audacity that he has, and if you can take that and utilize it, then you're creating a formula for success. And that's how I look at him. And I don't think a lot of people who oppose Trump look at him that way. I do. I oppose him. Nothing that I do is in support of Trump. But I'm looking at what can I steal from him.
Yeah.
You know, with that attitude.
Yeah, you can learn something from anybody.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I lean more right, conservative myself, but I'm very open-minded. I talk to liberals, socialists, all day long. I don't care. Democrats, I don't care. I think Trump is exactly what you said, and I think he's also a liar.
Oh yeah,
he lies about everything.
Oh yeah,
everything. The dude's talking, he's lying.
Yeah. It's pathological because it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
Like I think politicians, like lying or being, inaccurate or loose with the truth is part of being a politician.
But he's terrible at it.
But he's pathological. His is a personality trait. Because and I hate saying it because it's like I hate to take a person and say, yeah, he is a liar by his nature.
Or for like you said, the job.
Yeah.
But you're saying he's pathological.
He's it because when you look at what he lies about, so much of it is unnecessary.
Yeah.
Right. It's like I don't think most people will not lie if they don't have to.
Sure.
Right. Even if they're inclined to do so because they're like, it would be better for me. If you told, hey, can we do this without lying? Most people would take that route.
But he sets himself up for failure too. By the way he acts, he kind of sets it up to where he can't say I'm sorry or I was wrong. Because he allows himself to be in the wrong so much that it's hard for him.
He can't take it back. And that's the pathology.
Yeah.
It's that narcissism of lying.
Yeah.
To where it's like you can't help but lie. And then even when you're confronted with it, you can't say I'm sorry and make amends. That's pathological.
Sure.
And that makes him different than any other president because I don't think there's been a president that hasn't lied, but in terms of a pathological lie that's part of who they are, I wouldn't say that most of the presidents have been that way.
So do you think he has some sociopath tendencies?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Or even some psychopathic tendencies. I mean,
I think
definitely sociopath.
Definitely sociopath, and part of that, I think some of that comes from the hedonism and nihilism of being wealthy. Being filthy rich in this country will change you, or
develop you into not normal.
Yeah. And so I think that comes with that. I think it comes the disconnect with how people really think and feel, and the apathy and the ambivalence it changes.
You can't relate.
Yeah, it changes you.
Yeah,
it changes you. It changes your brain. It changes how your brain operates. It changes your ideals.
And he was like that since he was a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, he was rich. His family was rich, so he never, I don't think, seen the world in another lens.
Yeah, and he wasn't just like rich and sitting around being rich. He was actively rich, right? He worked in real estate and so he was always chasing the money. And so that became his lifestyle. And I think that type of lifestyle will turn you into a narcissistic asshole. And that's basically what he is. And he's bad.
You're right about the other stuff too. It's something that Michael and I have even talked about it. I think I've talked to you about it, Michael, where he doesn't know much about things. He really doesn't.
Oh yeah, for sure. He does. He gets questions posed to him all the time that he just brushes it off and moves on to something else because you clearly can tell he has no clue.
And I will say he's been politically savvy to actually do that, to just be like,
sure,
because most people would like kind of be stuck and be like, oh Like, I don't know. And maybe even admit, you know what? I don't know.
Yeah.
But he's been trained to be
just
like,
plows
I
through
don't
it.
know, move to something else. Or I don't know, let me give you the most dumbest answer ever.
Yeah, you're asking me that question because
Yeah.
you're a liar.
Yeah, you're a liar.
I don't know. Let me insult you. Yeah.
Yeah, that deflection, that's all trading. You
Yeah.
got to go to, communication school to learn how to deflect like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he's done. Because I mean that's almost every question that he's asked.
Yeah.
Where it's a designed to be a tough question, even designed to be a question that sort of exposes him, and he's like, "Oh, I know what this is," and then this answer comes right out of a playbook.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, man.
Yeah. So when I started, before I asked you about what your thoughts were about Trump, I was. Some people have fallen for the okie doke, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think people on all sides, in all groups, have fallen for it. And what I mean by that is, when I said that we were doing good in the 90s, and I thought, racism was going downhill. It really seemed like, coming out of the 70s, the summer of love, and a lot of my parents' generation, they had kind of start chipping away at that. And then the next generation, us growing up in the 80s and 90s, we kind of chipped away at it some more, and it started to just be like, okay, we're just living our life. We're all here together. And then now with this Trump thing, I mean, a lot of white people fell for it.
Yeah.
A lot of white people fell for it. Now they're talking, bad about their neighbors again. A lot of black people fell for it, because I go places and I want you to give me some insight on this, because I'm the big bald head guy. If I'm out and about and I'm not wearing my hat, or I'm not, if I'm just, I don't know, and not wearing anything that makes black people think I'm cool with them.
Right.
If I'm just out and about,
Right.
I see looks now that I never got before.
Yeah.
I never.
Because they think you're a skinhead, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they think I'm a MAGA guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm just like, wow. I trip out on it because I don't get mad.
Right.
I don't cause, confrontation. I just look at it and I just learn.
Right.
I'm like, okay, they're falling for it.
Right.
But same thing happened. A lot of people are falling for it.
Yeah.
Not just these black people.
Yeah.
I know plenty of black people. Nothing changed. Hey, what's up, Jeremiah? What's going on?
Right.
Business as usual.
Right.
Or I meet plenty of black people I don't even know. Fine.
Yeah.
No, you can't sense anything. But then there's a certain group of black people. It's usually the black people that only hang out with black people.
Okay.
You know what I mean? They don't really associate with other people.
Right.
Those are the type of black people that when I'm out and about, I see they're the ones that are looking at me like, oh, he's one of them.
Right.
And it's like, wow, is this where we're back to now, where we're starting to, we got this leader, he's a leader only by, election, not by actions.
Right.
This leader that we have is kind of dividing our society, where we've made so much progress, because we used to be we were built on slavery. We were built on, division. People lived in different neighborhoods. People went to, different schools until we were integrated, and you couldn't go into businesses, and we didn't socialize with each other. And then that started to break down, was I think the 50s, 60s, into the 70s.
Into the 70s, yeah.
And then it's just so weird to see how, I guess my first question to you is, do you Know some black people who don't trust white people?
Oh yeah.
Since this whole thing with the MAGA and Trump and all that?
Yes, but I would modify it and say not just since. I think the black people that I know that don't trust white people have never trusted white people, and it didn't matter.
It didn't change because of Trump.
No.
It's just now I can read it. I can see it.
Yeah.
More maybe. We're able to
more,
hide it.
Yeah, it's more underlined. But I also think, Jeremiah, a lot of that is because the things that created division have not changed. I think the language and the strategies that put those things in place may have changed and have changed because of things like civil rights movement and the economic ups and downs that our country has gone through in the past 30 years. But those actual walls that were put in place, they never fell, because those walls exacerbated what you're talking about in terms of people who gravitate to each other and stay in that, right? It was slavery and then antebellum state policies of Jim Crow that created a gravitation of black people to each other, right? In this country, most black people lived in one area, and that was the South. They didn't live in the North. Black people who came as slaves came to this country on the East Coast and the Southeast Coast, and then were bought and sold and then settled in the South, the majority. And once slavery was abolished, it didn't change for a while. The black, now freed people stayed in the South until what occurred as the largest movement of people in this country, larger than the Cherokee Trail of Tears, larger than the California Gold Rush. It was the south to north migration of black people who realized staying in the South was not going to give them any economic advantage for the future. They were the freed slaves were still working on the plantations that they had been enslaved on, but they were being exploited financially, and so they weren't getting anywhere. And they kept hearing the North is building factories and they need people, and people who had escaped even prior to slavery would write back and say, hey, they've got jobs here. And so now this mass of people just up and left, went to Chicago, went to New York, went to Compton. And that's where you started seeing this community of black people in these cities, what we call the inner city, which used to be all rural. But when they got there, when they got to New York, when they got to Chicago, they gravitated to each other, right? A lot of them already had family that was in Chicago in certain neighborhoods. So they went to where their peoples were, moved in with them, and then looked to, where can I buy a house? But they couldn't buy a house because there were policies in place that were that opposed any upward financial movement of black people. And so they stayed in the places where they were, and more people moved into those places. And then you had a larger population of black people in these suburbs. And so the city would look and say, well, we got to build more housing, and they build projects. Now, the idea wasn't to really build a project. They just wanted to build housing because housing meant money from renters. And so idea,
workers.
Yeah, from workers and things like that. But again, it created a concentrated community who then had to deal with these people they weren't able to buy houses. They weren't getting the best jobs. And so they didn't have economic advantages, and oftentimes were kept away from that. So now you fast forward into, you get voting rights, that was huge, because now your voting rights have always been attached to property. And so now you might open more doors to property ownership, and black people are starting to feel like we can actually be upwardly mobile, but we got to fight these things that, you know, have been kept keeping us down. And that's where the civil rights movement originated from. And so you have the success of the civil rights movement in the 60s, but people haven't moved from those neighborhoods, right? They haven't moved from the projects. They might have moved to the suburbs right outside the projects, but that's it. You still have the concentration of people in the South whose economic situations have not changed. And so you still have these things that are in place. The laws that were passed, they not really repealed. And then when you do start having success like the civil rights movement, you end up having this backlash from the white power structure that put all this stuff in place in the first place. And a lot of that was just based on fear. And that fear helped to continue to create the barriers of keeping us from interacting with each other. It was all fear. I don't want black people moving into my neighborhood. Why? And then it's the reasons you're like, they're not really valid reasons. They're all reasons based on fear. And then when you start seeing militant black movements that are political, it's, because all white people are honkies. And it's like, what's really underneath that? Well, it's fear, because we've experienced them riding into our neighborhoods and killing us and lynching us for 50 years. We've experienced medical experiments on us for 60 years. So I'm scared of them. Now you got two people who are different, who are not so different, because they still mixed. You still had black people and white people getting together and having mixed babies, but there's still this drive of, you got to do everything to avoid that. And when you really look at why, it's all because both sides are scared of each other. That's what we're seeing today. We're seeing the politics of fear, which became extremely successful, in my opinion, with Nixon and onward. The politics of fear, where, and Nixon even admitted it, that his whole law and order campaign was about fear, because the big thing that was really scary in Nixon's time was Vietnam. And well, that wasn't even scary. What was scary was that people were protesting, and they were white people, and they were on college campuses. That was the big thing that was scary for politicians in the 70s. That stuff was coming home, and people were smoking a bunch of weed and listening to rock and roll, and they were loving each other. That shit was scary. So we got to have law and order. And Nixon was the first to admit that his whole law and order campaign was based on making people scared of black people. Because he knew.
He said that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he even talked about how the language of law and order, you say law and order and you say war on drugs, and it's really about black people. This is really about black people. And when I say he said it, like, he's on tape, because remember, the crazy thing about Nixon was he taped himself. And all of the conversations that he was having with his staff and aides and talking about these issues. And he not only, so he taped himself, which also meant that he taped people who were talking to him. And he would hear him have these.
And that was in the 70s.
Yeah,
right?
It was in the 70s, yeah. And 60s and 70s. But you have these now in the government wouldn't let him destroy the tapes. So we have them for posterity.
Late 60s.
Yeah, late 60s, early 70s. And you listen to it and you're like, yeah. And then he had some of his close aides who were like, yeah, that's exactly what it was about. Aides who felt compelled to talk about it because one, they were betrayed by Nixon. A couple of them went to prison supporting Nixon, and Nixon was able to resign and get a pardon.
Sure.
So when it all came back, there's okay, we can talk about this. Well, it was these the politics of fear that became successful, because that's how this dude got elected, and that's how he would have gotten reelected had he not gotten caught. And how politicians who came after him, like Reagan, who had a law and order platform, and even Clinton, who had a law and order platform, who understood that if we are going to operate on that, we got to scare the shit out of people. When Bush pushed the war on drugs and had that bag of crack, the story comes out later, yeah, he sent somebody to go buy some, and that dude couldn't find it, and had to run, because there's a black neighborhood, there's a black projects right by the White House. This guy runs out right out on Potomac, where they had the big mall, can't find crack. So someone tells him, well, go to the ghetto. So he goes to the ghetto and gets the crack. But the story is, I just ran right outside and bought some crack. And it's like, no, you had to, but everyone bought into it.
Yeah.
Right.
I always wondered why there was so much emphasis on the guy on the corner selling drugs rather than the problem, which is the drugs coming over the border. Yeah. Isn't your problem with that country over there who's growing all the coca leaves and then processing the coca leaves and then bagging up the cocaine and then shipping it across the border?
Yeah. Well, it's a rhetorical question, because it's a problem, but it's not a problem if you're benefiting from it. Then your problem is the message. What does it look like? What do I put out as the message? So what I do is say, I don't want people to know that I'm actually in bed, or those politicians that are running those South American countries are in bed with me. I'm trading arms and I'm laundering millions of dollars. I don't want that to come out. So let's turn the camera on the kids on the corner who are making the average corner drug dealer, DC, Chicago, LA, was making $7 an hour.
Selling drugs?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that the average, $7 an hour.
Yeah, there's some that brag that they make a lot, but that's not
true.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
But the average worker, because that's where they all started. They all started on the corner.
Yeah.
Even the guys who became quote unquote kingpins, they started on the corner. So everyone who's starting on the corner, which is the lifeblood of that drug enterprise, is the corner boys who then move up. It's a pyramid scheme. But the lifeblood of that, $7 an hour average.
So we can topple countries. We have a military that can topple countries, entire countries in the Middle East, or look at us now, and it was that Venezuela, and but we can't go find some dudes with AK-47s growing plants in the forest
because we're benefiting from it.
Yeah,
we can find them.
Why do America love their cocaine too?
Yeah, we can find, and their heroin.
Yeah,
because Muslims are complicit in the heroin trade. For sure.
Oh yeah, wasn't it?
All the opium came from Afghanistan.
Afghanistan has what, 95% of the world's
85. Yeah, 85, maybe 90. I mean, but 85% of the for like 30, 40 years. 30, 40 years, all of the opium that the world was consuming was coming from Afghanistan.
It's crazy.
And then, Afghanistan was going through its, fighting the Soviets, and then the Taliban taking over. Well, if they're the government, who do you think is benefiting from that trade? But we were benefiting from that trade. Everyone was benefiting from that trade. So when it comes to complicity and culpability, I don't want anyone to know that I'm involved in that. So I got to point to the people that I can create the message of fear.
And it's a likely villain, right? Yeah. Because you already had the platform of they're bad.
Yes, because black people were scary. You know, the fear of black people really stemmed from just the abolition of slavery, because the idea was black people were enslaved. So their labor, which is practically free, which is the best sort of capital enterprise you can ever engage in. If you can get free labor, you are going to become wealthy. That model is the only successful model in capitalism, free labor. And so and you can't find it, right? You got to create it, because most people are not going to give you their labor for free.
But they made black people more dangerous, if you would. Because let me just give you this my perception.
Okay.
Because like back when black people first got out of slavery, they were focused more on family, education, work, jobs, and it seems like by villainizing them or putting them in situations where they cannot have opportunities, then you created gangs that didn't exist.
Okay.
Back then.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
There was family structures back then. There was more men in the homes, more fathers present. Right. And then when you disrupt that and you what's the word I'm looking for? You kind of rattle a group of people.
Right.
You make those problems.
Right.
You create problems.
Yeah, no, and so I agree with that.